Okay, kannst loslegen.
Alright, my name is Annette Lietz and today I'm going to read the poem I Dream a World by Langston Hughes. I dream a world where man no other man will scorn, where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn. I dream a world where all will know sweet freedom's way, where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day. A world I dream where black or white, whatever race you be, will share the bounties of the earth, and every man is free. Where richness will hang its head, and joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all mankind. Of such I dream my world. So, having read this poem, first of all, I would like to talk about why this is my favorite poem by Langston Hughes and how it speaks to me. And later on, I will try to explain and analyze his beautiful work of art. So, whenever I read the poem I Dream a World, and when I started reading it for the first time, I was immediately caught by its rhythm. And I was also immediately reminded of Martin Luther King's most famous speech, I Have a Dream, whose title is quite similar to the poem's title as well. We dealt with a lot of speeches when I was in high school, in 11th and also in 12th grade, and we discussed I Have a Dream in detail. That's why I was immediately reminded of it. And it is one of the most powerful and overwhelming speeches I have ever listened to. I remember having been thrilled and having felt this passion and spirit when actually listening to a speech by watching its video recording in class. I definitely like the idea of Martin Luther King having been inspired by Langston Hughes' poem, because Langston Hughes' poem must have been published between 1941 and 1950, while King's speech was in 1963. Of course, we don't know whether King had actually read the poem by Hughes, but it could have been a nice idea that he had been inspired by it. Me personally, I have always been impressed by King's strength and courage, his way of speaking and his metaphorical choice of words, like, for example, at the beginning of his speech, when he says, "This momentous degree is a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice." So, as can be seen, he also addresses segregation and discrimination Black people had to suffer. And these are also all topics that Hughes addresses in his poem. And in order to express and also underline the urgency of the moment, King talks about historical events, which is very interesting for an international student who's interested in the historical events of the United States. For instance, he refers to Abraham Lincoln, who was the 16th President of the United States of America, and who issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1963, and thus abolished slavery. And it also reminds me of the film Lincoln, which I saw a few years ago. Moreover, he also refers to the Declaration of Independence that was passed a few years earlier in 1776, which is definitely one of the nation's most cherished symbols of liberty. It states the equality of all people. Just think about the famous quotation that we all know, which says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, and that everybody has got unalienable rights, such as life, liberty, and of course pursuit of happiness." His powerful words unified the nation and impressed me a lot. But now I would like to talk about Hughes' poem in more detail and also draw parallels to King's speech. So, at the beginning of his poem, Hughes calls for a peaceful cooperation of people who are able to tolerate each other instead of letting their hatred spread. This is clearly indicated by his words, "I dream a world where man no other man will scorn." So in this case, he uses the term man, which does not only refer to all men on earth, but of course also it also includes women and children. Furthermore, he also points out that in the world he's dreaming of, nobody is superior to another person, because there is equality that is relevant for everybody. And as can be seen, the poem is obviously written in the present tense. So for me, it seems as if the dream is very active and currently processing his mind. And just as I said before, in his speech, Martin Luther King also addresses main issues like his wish to end segregation and discrimination in order to establish freedom, justice, and equality. And these are basically the same aspects as the ones Hughes talks about. Moreover, Hughes also addresses Christian values or Christian ideals, for instance, the love of neighbor. And I will just read the quotation which says, "Where love will bless the earth and peace its paths adorn." He fancies the beauty of a world without prejudices and wars, and this beauty can even be felt and tasted. This is also supported by the personifications of the world's love and peace. Martin Luther King's speech is very metaphorical as well. For instance, he talks about an oasis of freedom and justice, and you can just try to imagine being in a desert, and then you have this oasis which refreshes your mind and just helps you to relax a little bit. So by repeating the words "I dream a world" twice, the poem is carried forward, and this also helps to stress the whole process. And actually, it is repeated 3 times throughout the poem, but it is inversed in the third time, because I think he does that in order to lay stress on the word or on the term "a world," because he says "a world I dream" instead of "I dream a world," just in order to do this. And the repetition indicates the importance of the headline as well. And of course, as it is repeated the whole time, it is also easily to remember. Additionally, he also uses 2 personifications, or 2 other personifications. I will just read them out. "Where greed no longer saps the soul, nor avarice blights our day." So we can see that he treats an inanimate object as a human being to create a picture in the reader's mind and to make sure that his or her understanding is better. Greed seems to be a character trait that is sometimes hard to suppress, because we all experience it, but it is still very bad because it weakens the soul. And sometimes when I read this, it reminds me of dilemma situations in which you have to decide between your own personal wishes and advantages and the society's wish. Because, for example, there are some things you have to decide, and they will probably be better for the society, or they will be better for you. You have to find a balance between your own wishes and the society's wishes. But what he criticizes is that too many people are too self-centered and only interested in what is good for themselves, but do not really care about other people. And besides, I found it quite interesting to examine the use of personal pronouns throughout the poem. For example, the use of "our," such as in the verse "No avarice blights our day," because it includes the addressee as well as the speaker himself. And this, of course, always creates a feeling of unity and belonging for the reader or the listener of the poem. He also says, "Whatever race you be." So he addresses the reader directly, first of all to catch his or her attention, but also to make him or her aware of the fact that everything he is talking about is part of their business too. In the last verse, which is, as I just said, "Of such I dream my world is directed to all people living on the earth, regardless of their heritage or their skin color or anything." Overall, Hughes claims for a world where the color of a person's skin does not play a role, which is a world without segregation and discrimination. And this is also exactly what King dreams of. And there is a very famous quotation that I like a lot, which is, "I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." And it is a sentence that King says in his speech, and it has stuck in my head ever since I read his speech. And Hughes even wishes for the people to share the bounties of the earth has given to them, such as natural gifts, to raise the gap between the rich and the poor, and to learn to split ownings into parts. And this idea of sharing things between black and white people, this is also an idea that is also captured in King's speech. So there you can draw a parallel. Moreover, just to end this, Hughes explains the wonderful results of the world he's dreaming of. For example, he says that such a world where justice and freedom and everything are values that are established produces joyful people. So he compares joy with a pearl by saying, "And joy, like a pearl, attends the needs of all mankind." So it can be seen how precious it is and that it needs to be protected by everybody. What I consider worth bringing up at the end of this analysis is that even Obama seizes some of the ideas above that King has used and that also Hughes has used. For instance, in his inauguration speech. And overall, when I consider the current situation in the United States, I'd say that there has been a lot of positive change. For example, the US has a black president now, which wasn't imaginable a few years ago. But however, it is also shocking to see that we are not 100% there yet, even though a lot of years have passed. Discrimination is still recognized. Just think about the shooting of Michael Brown in August 2014. And that's why I sometimes ask myself, how long is it going to take us to achieve the goals that Lincoln, Hughes, King, and many other people had aimed for years ago? So I think that we need a sophisticated society that helps realizing the community that values justice, equality, and freedom that we need for the future to keep the change going. So that's all I have to say about it.